Star Saber? Well, most nowadays only know the name by the sword was of the same name, but spend any time in Transformer circles, and it won't be long until you're told that the name also belongs to an Autobot Leader from the Japanese only Transformer show Victory. It's also where the majority of his characterizations still comes from, as Star Saber has only made cameo appearances since his show went off air. He could be described as a true good paladin, with him fighting the forces of evil with his sword, using it more as a gun than a sword most of the time, alongside taking the responsibility to raise a war orphan as his own son, the human Jan McKenzie. With the last time that Star Saber made any sort of major appearance being in the original IDW one of comics, where Star Saber was an Autobot Swordmaster, but that's where the similarities end. As like most Autobots who aren't from the 84 cast, he was turned into an Agent Evil Autobot Zealot, completely warping the core of who Star Saber is. And though he wasn't under some kind of mind control, IDW Star Saber is just a prime example of those comics making the majority of Agent Autobots evil for no good reason. It doesn't help that he wasn't even used much either, as when I read those comics, Star Saber wasn't used much outside of his introductory story. He only appeared later on a starship that the Protectobots would quickly take as their own as a getaway ship, and then he dies by Cyclonus, cleanly slicing him in half in Oat mode. But with the IDW event over with, Star Saber does have a connection with a similarly named character, Wing Saber, with his energon design basically being a more boxy version of Dual Star Saber, as for all intents and purposes, he is the Unicorn Trilogy version of Star Saber. And in the show, before he gains his toy design, Wing Saber had a show-only previous form, Saber, just like Star Saber. Though, at least for Star Saber, the smaller red bot was included in the toy's play pattern. And just like his predecessor, Wing Saber can power link, although unlike Star Saber, Wing Saber power link is to upgrade Optus Prime, which either forms the edge-on version of Jet Optus, or more bulky form with claws and arm-mounted blasters. He comes back in Cybertron with the A10-inspired old form instead of the flying wing of his edge-on design. He still retains his ability to combine with Optus, forming a much cooler version of Jet Optus combination. While in Cybertron, Wing Saber does mostly find himself in the background until Optus needs him to form Jet Optus, but in Edge-on he also suffers some same fate until Omega Prime takes over as the main super form, completely putting Wing Saber as a background character. But before that, there was build-up to Wing Saber with the previously mentioned Saber, as he had a strong sense of justice, which led him to confront Shockblast during his escape of the prison Saber was guarding. Despite being completely outmatched, that didn't stop Saber from attempting to stop Shockblast, suffering major damage in the process. But Saber's strong sense of justice persisted. With that spark, he was able to be reforged into Wing Saber. Now, with all that setup out of the way, I'm going to go over a few ways to mix them together to create a few ways to introduce Star Saber into a story. With the first way being how Star Saber is typically introduced as the design he is known for, with this version of Star Saber having a few different variations to it. First one being basically taking Victory Star Saber and Jan and updating them for modern standards, which can work with the normal Star Saber storytelling, but I think it could also work in a story like Earthspark, where the family takes more prominence in said story. Like in Victory, I see Star Saber as a beacon of truth and justice, being a solid foundation for his son to lean on as he grows up, and while there's a bit of a disconnect between the two, as Star Saber is an alien robot and Jan being a human, but their love for each other being more than enough to overcome any difficulties that come their way. With the possible second way to introduce Star Saber is him being an Asian Autobot. Well, I don't think how IDW took that direction of Star Saber, but I do like the idea of him being this Asian swordmaster and leader of Cybertron's past. Going back to my Nova Prime video, for a moment, I could see Star Saber being from Nova's time, even being Nova's second in command, or being a leader of Cybertron after Nova Prime, if you want Prime to be more aware in a story. As for how he could be used in a story, I imagine this take on Star Saber doing good work in the distant past, leading him to sacrifice himself and have him disappear into the current day Decepticons or Criticons find his unconscious body. With his mind defenseless, the Decepticons or Criticons place Star Saber under their mind control, and I would also give Star Saber the appropriate evil color scheme too, to show the corruption. Well, the mind control would work for a time, but I imagine the second Star Saber hears civilians in distress, the blazing justice within his spark would immediately overcome the mind control. As I feel like Star Saber being up with his heroics is a part of his character too, so I feel like Star Saber's spark of blazing justice being able to overcome the mind control just feels right to me. Also, obviously, the second Star Saber steps out of the mind control, his color scheme reverts back to normal too. Well, Star Saber would just be another Autobot commander or Optimus Prime's own command in this scenario, but I do think he would mentor some Autobots to have him go under his wing and pass down his swordfighting techniques. And obviously, the two Autobot sword fighters, Drift and Windblade, would be the primary ones that Star Saber would mentor in this scenario. Star Saber could even be the reason why Jeff joins the Autobots. Like, Deadlock just joined the Decepticons because he didn't have anywhere else to go. Well, the other Autobots would say otherwise, but Star Saber, being another swordsman, is finally able to get through to Deadlock, becoming Drift and Star Saber's student. And I would like to think that Windblade and Star Saber would get along well. Like, even if she's written as a recruit Autobot or a seasoned Autobot, I feel like most versions of Windblade would get along well with Star Saber. Maybe at most, she would find Star Saber's extremely heroic personality a bit too much at times, but that's it. and she's more than happy to learn his ancient sword techniques to help improve her own. Finally, before we move on, I think it'd be funny if a story had both Star and Wing Saber meet each other. Like, Wing Saber is a Star Saber fanboy, even modifying his appearance to resemble Star Saber's, with the other's character arc being Wing Saber under Star Saber's guidance, becoming more of his own bot of his own making, which would be signified by Wing Saber upgrading from his Edon design to its Samsung one, where Star Saber still influenced the design, but it's clearly a design that's more true to Wing Saber. Onto the third possible version of Star Saber, and that's combining both the Autobot and the Sword Star Saber. Character-wise, I don't see him changing that much from his previous two versions. We just need to go over how a non-prime can wield a blade that only another prime can. Simple. Option 1 being Star Saber's Spark of Blazing Justice is just that pure good. He uses the sole exception and can wield the Star Saber sword. Or option 2, my ideal version, where Star Saber starts his story as Saber. Despite being a great swordsman, he's ultimately just a normal Autobot. The location he was stationed at gets attacked by a massive Decepticon fleet. Saber and his Autobots put up a good fight, but the numbers just aren't on their side. They end up cornered with a mortally injured Saber in the same room as the relic they've been protecting, the broken remains of the Star Saber. Just like in option 1, Saber is just that pure good. He could wield the Star Saber, but since in this version it's broken, Saber just leaves it where it is, don't want to damage the blade any further. As without Solus or another Prime, there's no way to fix the Star Saber blade. But the Star Saber can be reforged, as it does glow whenever Saber is nearby. In a last-ditch Hemeri effort, the Star Saber is used to repair Saber, reforging him into the Autobot Star Saber. While Vissal's sword is gone, but by the product of making the Autobot Star Saber, it creates 3 minicons, the air defense team, and when needed, Star Saber can call upon them to combine to reform the Star Saber once more. Though realistically, the remains of the Star Saber blade would just combine as Saber's old sword to form the Victory Saber. Aside if I change the backstory, there isn't really much anything else different about this Star Saber as a character, though I can see this wasn't becoming out of between the time of Optimus and Megatron going to Earth and going missing to waking up on Earth millennia later, with this Star Saber holding the line until Optimus is able to reconnect with the Autobot again, with this Star Saber becoming a top commander of Autobot leadership. Lastly, I do have an idea of going for circle and have a story where Wing Saber becomes Star Saber. Where this here as being an expanded version of providing both Star Sabers that we just went over. So Wing Saber starts off as being an unexperienced warrior with a strong heroic code. As time goes on, he holds his heroic spirit and maybe even begins taking on swordsmanship after becoming an experienced warrior. After some time as being an experienced warrior and swordsman, Wing Saber gets badly injured, and the broken Star Saber is used to repair Wing Saber into becoming the brand new version of Star Saber. Well, I can see the Star Saber being active anywhere in the timeline, as nothing specifically locks this character down in the distant past or more current day stories. So personally, I have the Star Saber be active after Optimus wakes up again, where maybe he's working with Optimus, getting experience during the war, after Optimus disappears as he upgrades from Wing to Star Saber, and maybe even after Optimus wakes up after a while, this is when we gain more Star Saber like story elements, fighting Dishars and adopting Jan and becoming both a father and a hero for the galaxy. And with that, we're ending this video. What do you think about if it takes the Star Saber? Do you think it is could work dangerous Star Saber into the West? Or would you introduce him differently into a modern day story? But in any event, thank you for watching.